Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today, we have a video I did not want to do. Well, I didn't want to do it today. I did want to do it, but I did a video today, if you follow my channel, on a Francesca Bianchi fragrance, and it was called The Lover's Tale. And this is probably my favorite Francesca Bianchi fragrance because it highlights two of my favorite notes in perfumery, which is iris, or in Francesca Bianchi's case, more of this orris butter, orris concrete accord that she created with leather, okay? And I really enjoyed The Lover's Tale because it does have a little bit of castoreum. It's a little bit animalic. I've enjoyed wearing it today. And so I did this video, and I uploaded it, and someone in the comments said, hey, I would really like for you to try to review some other Francesca Bianchi fragrances. Can you review this one or that one? So I went to go pull out my decants to see which ones I actually have, because these were very kindly sent to me by a subscriber of the channel named Nissan. And when I did this video, I thanked him before, and I'll thank him again. Very kind of him to send me these. I have even more up here that I want to talk about. And so I was pulling them out, and of course, the Francesca Bianchi fragrance that I went to go look at couldn't just fall on the carpet. No, it had to fall directly on the metal piece of these sliding cabinets, and it completely busted. Totally broken. There's glass inside. I was able to spare some on my skin. I put this on about, I don't know, half an hour ago maybe. So this is a true early impression, first impression. But I want to put my thoughts out there because, well, first of all, because I lost all the juice. This was going to be my scent of the day one day in the future. I like to mix it up. I don't like to do the same house over and over usually. I like to kind of, you know, mix and match. If you go watch my review of Under My Skin, it was months ago. And so I like to kind of revisit a house, come back to it. But I'll tell you what this did today. This did something for me today because it allowed me to compare a fragrance from 2016. The Dark Side is from 2016, and Lover's Tale is from 2018. And one of the subscribers to the channel, Gonzalo, who I really trust, and I can tell he has a fantastic nose and an intimate knowledge of perfumery, he said in one of the comments, if you go to the Lover's Tale comment, you can see it. He basically said, I told you this in the last video you did, and I'll tell you again, Ramsey, I think Francesca Bianchi overdoses that ingredient that you were talking about that gives it that house DNA, that irisy, orris concrete, that almost, I said in The Lover's Tale, it gives the impression of, you know, this warm dinner roll, you know, because it has that texture, and it also gives this warmth, and it kind of, like yeast rises, it kind of fills in the holes. It rises throughout the composition, and it makes it feel very full. But it's one of the main things that you smell in every single fragrance that I've smelled of hers. In fact, I even have one full bottle that I bought called Etruscan Water, and this was hyped by Persolaise, I'll say, even though I take the responsibility for buying it. He said that this reminds him of a take on Estee Lauder's Azure, which is one of my favorite leather sheepers of all time. I have a vintage bottle. I absolutely adore Azure. And I put it very close to the top of my This Is Not a Top 10 ranked leather sheepra list. So you can go check that out if you're interested. If you have not watched that video, that is my ranked This Is Not a Top 10 leather sheepra list. And Azure is very close to the top. So as soon as I heard that, I was like, well, shit, I'll just blind buy this if that's the case. And of course, I was disappointed, as I so often am with modern perfume. But that DNA that is here is also in The Lover's Tale, and I can tell you, it doesn't take long to spot it in The Dark Side. I mean, it almost instantly comes out. I wish I could have given this a full wear, although I was able to salvage enough drops to where I feel confident talking about it. I actually got a lot of it on my skin because I picked it up as soon as it broke, and I used one of the, I don't know what you would call it, like those little blotter, not blotters, but, you know, here, I'll just show you one of these. I used one of these, what do they call them? Plastic pipettes. So you can get these on Amazon. These are cool. I use them to get inside of the, get inside of the splash fragrances and transfer it to, you know, my decants, because I like to spray my fragrance. I don't like to splash it on. So I just used that and applied what was left on my wrist. So I got a good amount on. I mean, it ran down from my wrist all the way down to the middle of my arm. So I salvaged a good amount at least. So that's why I said in the beginning, this is not a review that I wanted to do, but I'm forced to do it right now. I wish I would have gotten to give it a full wear, but at least I'm getting my thoughts out there on a fragrance. I will never own a full bottle. Unless I get on the Francesca Bianchi free bottle list, I will not have a bottle of the Dark Side. And I can tell you, listen to the breakdown and listen to the notes, and we'll get back to this conversation real quick of her overdosing that material. And why so many of her fragrances smell alike, and why if you've smelled one, you've kind of smelled all of them, it feels like. So here's the little breakdown. I said on the Lover's Tale that I can't go to the Francesca Bianchi Perfumes website because my work deems it as a prohibited website. So I can't read you the little blurb from the website, but there's a smaller blurb on base notes, and here's what it says. This is my dark side, and many others too. Straightforward at first sniff, then hauntingly soft, turning dry and intense like wood, intimate and delicate like lace. I would not call this fragrance delicate, by the way. It is a warmly sensual, addictive, dark scent which evokes the private, mysterious side we like to keep secret. Okay, so the Dark Side has top notes of honey and spicy notes, which somebody on the Lover's Tale comment section said the formula for Ramsey to like a fragrance is basically honey equals Ramsey likes it. And it's true. There's a lot of truth to that. I am a honey lover. I make it no secret. One of my favorite fragrances of all time is Boss No. 1 from the 80s. I love that animalic honey. It is just, you know, maybe because my father's signature scent was Paco Rabanne Pour Homme, and that has a animalic honey in the dry down of Paco Rabanne Pour Homme, especially the older bottles. So when I was a kid, the stuff he would have been wearing in the 80s and 90s, and that's been his signature scent for my entire life, by the way. It is, you know, something about honey. I love honey, and honey and leather are my two favorite notes, I would say. I think that's very fair. Iris is up there as well. So, so honey and spicy notes at the top. And one difference I can say just on comparing the two between the Lover's Tale and the Dark Side is the spicy. If you're a fan of spicy fragrances, this has a lot of spices. It just says spicy notes, but it feels like the spices are a major player here, much more important to the composition than a Lover's Tale. The Lover's Tale really focuses more on that iris and leather, which is one of the most magical combinations for me personally. But for you, if spices and honey or spices and iris are your preferred combination, then maybe the Dark Side is more your taste. And the heart notes are iris and violet. And you notice here, she says iris instead of orris butter, like with the Lover's Tale. So we'll come back to that in just a second. With a base of sandalwood, cedarwood, vetiver, amber, styrax, incense, patchouli, and vanilla. Now, I can't speak to the dry down, although I think I've smelled enough Francesca Bianchis to know that they don't do huge transitions from what I've experienced. There is not a huge difference between the opening and the dry down normally. They do change. I'm not saying they're completely linear, okay? Because they're not. That would not be fair to them to say that. But what I am saying is that that overdose of that orris, irisy DNA that she's created for herself, that so many people on YouTube applaud her for, is the reason why I think it's hard to smell, you know, the fragrance change and evolve over time, because like I said in the earlier video, it's like putting mortar on a brick. It fills in all the holes, but it also dampens the rest of the fragrance. It dampens the evolution of the fragrance to me. And nothing is more evident now that I have them both on my skin. Maybe this was a blessing in disguise. The fact that I have one here and now one right here. The similarities are mind-blowing. I mean, these two are actually probably, and then if I put I still have a little bit left of the decant that under my skin was in. If I put Under My Skin right here, I think the similarities between all three, and then if I put Etruscan Water here, I think all four would be mind-blowing. I really think that Gonzalo hit the nail on the head. He basically said what I ranted about for 30 minutes in a one-paragraph comment. I think that she overdoses that ingredient, that irisy, orris buttery, orris concrete DNA that she's so known for. And if you're a starter to niche fragrance, if you come from the designer game, or let's say all you've smelled or worn was Sauvage, YSL, you know, Versace Eros, if that's all you know, her fragrances are going to smell like a revelation, okay? But for me, if I go back to the days gone past and I think about my favorite 70s, 80s fragrances, how different they were, how unique they all smelled. Everything in the 80s did not smell the same. Just because it had castoreum and it was heavy and animalic did not mean it smelled the same. To me, Portos, YSL Coros, Antaeus, Leonard Porom, Furio, you know, here's another one that almost no one talks about. Daniel Hector, Character. This came out at the end of the 80s. It's absolutely stunning. You know, they all smell, they all have their own DNA. They're unique to me. Her fragrances are not unique. They are slight riffs on the same old tune, which I'm sure has been a great way for her to compose these fragrances, because I think it's easy to kind of change something here or there, highlight the leather in the Lover's Tale, highlight the spices and maybe a little bit of the incense in the woods in the dark side. And that's what it does seem like. It seems like what is starting to come through now is a little bit of this burning incense wood dry down, but it's the same overdose of that orrisy concrete DNA that she's known for, just with a little bit of things amped up here. If you love leather like me, if you love leather and iris and that combination, go with the Lover's Tale. If you like spices and incense, go with the dark side. You know, if you like a chypre construction, go with the Etruscan Water, which I'm not bashing this and saying I don't like it. I do think it's a good fragrance, just a little bit boring for where I'm at right now in my perfume journey, if you will. Now, one thing I do have to point out, because it is pretty evident from the get-go, is she lists iris here. Specifically, iris, not orris butter, not orris concrete, iris. And there is something that is slightly more powdery to this composition, slightly more traditionally iris, let's say. It does feel like there's something slightly more violety, irisy, traditional irisy, maybe even though it's, you can definitely tell this is a Francesca Bianchi DNA, there's just a slight nuance, a slight difference. It still has that bread-like, you know, yeast rising texture in my brain when I smell it. It's very full and thick and rich, you know, and it does give off a slight bit of warmth, but the incense kind of, I think, puts a lid on that as well. So just like I said that, you know, that DNA that she's composed has kind of put a lid on the evolution of some of the fragrances that I've smelled from her line, so too does the incense in the woods and the base, I think, it puts a lid on the warmth of this fragrance. It takes it in a little bit more balanced direction, which I don't know if it's good or bad, honestly. I just have to be honest with you guys and gals. At this point, I don't know if that's good or not, because one of the things I really do enjoy about her fragrances is they seem to have this human element to them. You know, a Lover's Tale has a little bit of this sexual tension, two people, you know, in love, and, you know, there are the good and the bad, right, that come with it. The amazing love and maybe the terrible fights that come. And Under My Skin had that, you know, locked in a room with somebody that you are just infatuated with, and the AC is off and it's hot as hell in there, and you guys have just been hanging out, and the only time you leave the room is to go get another bottle of Ozarka. You know, it has that kind of feel. that kind of dirty animalic, two bodies, you know, the warmth of two bodies against each other, skin on skin. Under My Skin has that skin on skin, which is a different fragrance, by the way. There is a fragrance called Skin on Skin, I believe, from L'Artisan Parfumeur. I've never smelled it. But Under My Skin does have that, like, the warmth of two bodies coming together, right? This one, even though you might think it's starting to go in that direction, the incense kind of cools everything off for me. The woody, cedary incense cools everything off. The vetiver feels a little bit... I wouldn't say the vetiver is highlighted, but it does feel like maybe the vetiver is a little bit more amped up here. But that is almost like an initial prognosis for the first hour or so this has been on my skin. Again, I like it. I would wear it. I'm definitely not saying it's a bad scent. But what I am saying is, if you compare them next to each other, and this is something that I normally would not get a chance to do, because normally I would take a shower in the morning, and then this would be my scent of the day. But since this just completely, you know, we've got to be a little bit flexible here. Otherwise, you guys would just never hear my thoughts on this. It would have went in the trash. So I was able to salvage what I could. It's been a little bit of a blessing because I can smell them right next to each other. And it really is amazing. Even though they're different, that overall, and it has to be that overdose of whatever ingredient she's using, whatever, you know, molecule she's getting from these oil houses, she is overdosing. And it is, on one hand, it's giving her house a DNA, and on the other hand, to maybe a more seasoned nose, it's feeling like the fragrances are just a little bit out of balance. Like that overdose note is all you smell over and over and over and over and over again. Why would you want to buy a line of all of her fragrances when they all smell so similar? You don't want a fragrance that smells 50, 60, 70% similar. It's like the problem that I had with that Roja Dove fragrance we talked about the other yesterday on my live stream. You know, one of the blind sniff victories that came from yesterday's live stream is a spin-off from Roja Dove. And it's called Pierre de Val. I think it was Pierre de Valet. Oh, crap. I forgot the name. Yeah, here we go. Pierre de Valet, number 47. And I'd never even heard of this Pierre de Valet brand. Roja Dove is listed as the perfumer. And I sprayed it on and I was like, wow, this is an amazing iris leather, but it smells so much like Great Britain. Come to find out, that's exactly what it's compared to, is Great Britain. And, you know, it's a different brand, technically. It's the same perfumer. It smells like they just kind of took Great Britain and made this other fragrance for a different brand, thinking maybe if someone smells this, they won't smell Great Britain. Maybe they think the people who are buying their fragrances are so rich, they'll just buy everything. I don't know. But it's definitely, it's redundant to own them both, let's say. That's how I'm starting to feel about Francesca Bianchi. It feels like it is redundant to own all of her fragrances, that you could easily pick one that you really love, and that would be it. If that's even worth it to you. You know, for me, it's like, I'm glad I smelled this, but if I never smelled this again, I wouldn't feel at a loss. You know, I wouldn't feel like I lost anything. Like, if I lost my Koros bottles and I never got to smell or wear them again, it would literally leave like a hole. Like, I would have to go hunt it down. Like, that is a forever fragrance in my collection. And her fragrances don't give me that desire. They don't give me that fire. They don't give me that that need to own, you know, to have it in my collection, like a must own. And when your collection gets large, obviously there's only so many fragrances that are really must owns. But I plan on doing a video maybe, or maybe even a live stream for New Year, where I pick a fragrance from each brand that is basically my favorite from the house. If you said I can keep one from that house, which one would I keep? And I've done some perfumer or some family portraits where I've kind of ranked the fragrances. So you have an idea, I think, from some of the houses. Like, you probably know with YSL, I'd keep Koros. With Hermes, I'd keep Bel Ami. But some of these other houses, I think it might be kind of fun. You know, which, who do you keep for Escada? Or who do you keep for, you know, Lapidus? Or, you know, that kind of stuff. So, for her, so far anyways, it would be the Lover's Tale. So I feel like I have the wrong bottle. Like, I feel like I shouldn't have a full bottle of this. I should have a full bottle of the Lover's Tale. But who knows, maybe there's, I don't even want to touch my samples again because I don't want them to fall. But I did see there was one called the Dark Knight. I think it was called the Dark, so I do have the Dark Knight. So there will be more Francesca Bianchi content. But you're not going to see any more full bottles coming in. What I have been buying, I will share with you, are some very hard to find vintage fragrances that I've been very blessed to be able to source. And I can't wait for them to come so I can do some unboxings and show you what I've been going for. That's the kind of stuff that moves me nowadays. You know, the vintage fragrances that are dear and near to my heart. Niche nowadays. And again, I know we're going away from this particular fragrance, but I don't know how much I can add with an hour into it. I can just say that the woods and the incense is coming out more. The oricey, irisy facets here do feel a little bit more powdery than they do in the Lover's Tale. The powderiness from the Lover's Tale seemed to come maybe a little bit more from like the mimosa. Mimosa flower can sometimes go powdery. And the jasmine, I think there was like a Egyptian jasmine note that had this honeyed white floral aspect to it. And so overall though, I think it's a problem with niche. I really think niche is running into a problem because it used to be, back in the old days, it used to be designers that would put stuff like this out. You know, I mean, think about, what if this fragrance came out today? Just think about it. Who would put this out? Do you think it would be Dior? Hell no. Absolutely not. It would not be a Dior. This would be a niche, and they would charge $300 to $500 easy, right? And this would be lauded as the greatest fragrance of all time. And it should be lauded as the greatest fragrance of all time, or one of them. If you were serious, if you were a serious fragrance connoisseur and you came to me and threw down the gauntlet and said, this is the greatest fragrance of all time, I would respect that 100%. I could not argue at all because it has so much going for it, right? But who would put this out today? Definitely not Dior. It would have to be a niche company. The problem is the niche companies that now used to be the daring ones. Like, think about this. Amouage used to put stuff like this out, right? Mythman. This is an amazing fragrance. Some people say it smells like a nightmare. I absolutely love it. But this is probably one of the most challenging fragrances that you will smell. It has chrysanthemum. It has vetiver. It has ash, like volcanic ash smell. But that chrysanthemum flower is a funeral flower. It's a very strange fragrance because it invokes all of these different thoughts, you know. It invokes, there is some iris, but there's rum and vetiver and elemi and labdanum and ash and leather. But it invokes this, many people think it smells grandma, like a grandma smell. I don't think so at all. But, you know, it's very challenging. This is a very challenging scent. Most people, most men that smell this would struggle to wear it. There is a rum note in here, a boozy side, but it's kind of just a secondary player. It's not the main accord. But the reason I bring this up, I just randomly picked it. You could have picked any Amouage from the Christopher Chong days. The niche houses were the ones putting out the stuff that had balls, had character, had, you know, had the willpower, the will to kind of go against the grain, do their own thing. If it didn't sell, so what? It's a niche. It's supposed to be different. Maybe it'll catch on in a couple years. It wasn't supposed to be liked by 80% of the people who smelled it. Now, these niche companies that are now, they're going for sales. Now, Amouage is putting stuff out like Meander, or, you know, I'm going to do some early impressions on the new Amouages that came out that are set to come out for 2023. I still haven't even, I've been sitting on this for a month. I haven't even done the video on it. But rumor is, and from people I trust, that these are extremely mainstream. Why do we need Amouage to put out mainstream, right? That should not be for the niche house that took the gauntlet and, you know, over for the designers. They took the gauntlet over for the designers to put out the crazy and wild and different and challenging stuff, and now they're putting out the boring stuff. And so when I see a company like Francesca Bianchi that releases fragrance after fragrance after fragrance and they all smell the same, it's indication of a bigger sickness of the fragrance industry in general. They're all buying their oils from the same houses. Those oils are controlled by 4 or 5 main houses. Of course, they're all going to smell the same. There's no one willing to try anything new. The new oils that are coming out from those houses sit on the shelves for 10, 20, 30 years before the perfumers even use them. They're still using stuff that was popular, you know, long, long ago because they're scared to implement the new stuff. There's very few. The reason they're scared to implement it is because it is a dog-eat-dog world in the perfume world. And they are scared that if they don't get those sales, you know, they would rather put out a fragrance like Ralph's Club, for example, that smells like a mixture of Invictus and YSLY because it's going to bring in sales. You know, people are going to buy that fragrance. We're going to hate it, but it's going to bring in sales. That's the kind of shit that they're doing. And they know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly what they're doing. It's just more about money, which is fine to an extent. But when money is everything, where does the creative process come from? It's supposed to be coming from people like this. This is where the creative process is supposed to be. As you turn into a fragrance lover, you're supposed to go to this house or this type of house, right? But to learn that even now these niche houses that you're going to are putting out stuff that is just, you know, I'll say not very challenging, not very creative. It smells very similar over and over again. It's very disheartening. So where do you go? As a fragrance lover, where do you go? You go to vintage. That's it. That's the way forward with fragrance, is by going in the past. It's sad to say, but I would rather wear the old school Guerlains, you know, the old school Carons, the Van Cleef & Arpels from the 70s and 80s, you know, the vintage Hermes. To me, there's more time and effort. The ingredients smell better. Even the very tip-top high-end niche ingredients that are being used by houses like Roja Dove and Spirit of Dubai and stuff like that, many times they cannot compete with what I'm smelling in the vintage realm. They just can't. You know, it's, and the prices, the value for money is outrageous because, you know, even if you went and grabbed something like a $3,500 Roja's Haut Luxe, you know, you could put that up against a $30 bottle of Mitsuko and they compete. They absolutely compete. In my mind, they do. I get just as much enjoyment out of just wearing Mitsuko. And so there is a big problem in the niche fragrance game right now. And these niche houses are popping up like weeds. They're popping up everywhere. It seems like every time you look, there's a new house, and they don't just come out with a fragrance. Oh no, they're gonna launch their new house with 10, 20 fragrances at once. Just bam, here you go. And hopefully something sticks. They're just throwing shit against the wall, hoping something sticks, copying what worked over the last 10 to 12 years. Aventus clone over and over and over again. Invictus clone over and over and over again. Sauvage clone over and over and over again. And it just gets kind of redundant and boring. And that is actually one of the reasons why I wanted to do these videos. I was sick and tired of these YouTube bums getting free bottles from these brands. They love everything. Everything is just absolutely amazing. You have to run out and go buy that. There were very few people who were willing to stand up and say what they truly felt, good or bad. You know, whether it's going to hurt someone's feelings or not. Reviews should be unbiased, and there should be good reviews and there should be bad reviews. That's part of reviewing, right? And I think that most of the culture from people who watch YouTube, there are two types of people I've found. There are people who kind of understand this fact, and there are the newbies who get into it. And, you know, they're watching the big channels who are getting the free bottles. And so when they stumble across somebody like, you know, me or Eugene or Rich Mitch or you know, Bobby or whoever are doing these honest reviews, Rudy, sometimes it's almost like a slap in the face, like a red pill moment. You know, it's like a wake-up call to them. And some people, like, reject it, you know. It's, that's why they call it being enlightened. You know, when you're sleeping and the light turns on, what do? You shade your eyes. You look away. You're not ready to see the light yet, right? That's what that's where some of these people's heads and noses are basically at. They don't want to hear what I'm saying, which is perfectly fine. I completely understand that. I understand that you have to, it's like, the master will appear when the student is ready. You ever heard that saying? That's what the situation of the fragrance world reminds me of right now. There are slowly people kind of waking up to this fact, but there's so much money involved and the markups are so exorbitant. I was talking about this the other day too, and this pisses me off. Roja used to sell this Great Britain, which I talked about earlier. It smells like that Pierre de Valet number 47 that I loved from yesterday's live stream, right? And it used to be like 1,600 pounds. Insane amount of money, but that's what the MSRP was. That's what you would go pay if you walked into his boutique on the 5th floor of Harrods and bought it. And all of a sudden, they took it off the website. You couldn't buy it online. And they made it a exclusive to his boutique, I believe, in Harrods or something like that. It's an exclusive now. It's not as easy to get. You can't just go to roja.com or rojaparfums.com and buy it anymore. So I've been told. And they just cut the price in half. Just willy-nilly cut the price in half. If the markups are that huge, where, you know, because before, if you listen to the justification for it, it's like, oh, well, we use the most high-quality jasmine from Grasse, and you know, it's like, yeah, but you're limited to how much Rose de Mai you can put in. You're limited as to how much, you know, oak moss you can put in. You're limited as to this, that, or whatever. To, you know, you can't just, you know, you can't just go and make Rose 30% of the formula, like Russian Adam did, by the way, on one of his fragrances. But, you know, it's so when you break that down, and when you realize the markups are that huge that they can just cut the price in half just on a whim, unless it's been reformulated and they're not telling anyone, which is another issue in a different video altogether. But, you know, that's a big problem when the profit motives are that large. You know, there was a perfumer who posted how much it cost to make Amber Absolute for Tom Ford on the internet one day. I guess he got pissed off. I don't know what happened. But the Amber Absolute that they're selling in the 250 ml flacon, they brought it back only in the 250 ml flacon, and you have to pay $2,000. Estee Lauder wants. They want you to pay $2,000 for that. He said that for a 100 ml bottle, that it costs like $2.87 to make that. Now, of course, that's not taking into account the bottle, which is the most expensive thing. That's just the formula. That's how much the juice costs, which people think, oh, you know, they're spending, of course, you buy a Roja Dove, you're getting the top quality juice. How much is it really for the juice? And how much is it for the bottle? I don't know. I'm just asking, theoretically. If a Tom Ford, who was charging $350 for 100 ml, it cost them $3 to make that formula. And of course the bottles all look the same, so they're synchronized. They're not having to make different bottles like Guerlain used to make in the past and all that stuff. So they're just pumping them out, economies of scale, you know? If the juice is cost that much, look at the markups. I mean, obviously there's other factors, and everyone has rent and employees, and I completely understand. I completely understand that. But the markups are way more than people think. People think that, you know, people think that the ingredients are so expensive and all of this stuff, and for many of these, they're not. For some brands, you go buy yourself a Riche Le Doré, where he's using Taif Rose of the royal grade and real ambergris and all of this stuff, you know. And one of his last fragrances, Russian Adam's Beauty and the Beast, 30% oud oil, the most heavily concentrated percentage of a perfume that he's ever made using oud. And if he was an oud distiller, so if that's the biggest he's ever used in a fragrance, imagine what some of these other brands were using. I'm telling you, if they say it's real oud, 9 times out of 10 or more, it's 0.01% of the composition. It's the tiniest of the tiniest of the tiniest drop that they can put in there and claim that they use real oud. So, sorry for the rant, but that's just how I feel. I feel like the industry is on a slippery, very slippery slope. There are very few niche fragrances nowadays, or, you know, even designers. Even you take the designer line and look at the high-end designer line. Look at what Dior's been putting out in that Privé line, or look at what YSL's niche line is, and oh my god, it is in shambles. It is a mess. It is absolutely horrendous what they're putting out in what should be the line where they're competing with houses like, you know, the old Amouage and MFK and Rojas and all of this stuff. And, you know, some of those Privés that Dior put out, my god, man, I mean, just wear this. Fuck that. But you have to trust your nose to get that. If you go on Instagram or if you go on YouTube and, you know, you see somebody hyping up vanilla Diorama because it's the greatest vanilla of all time, and I know there's a channel out there doing that, and then you smell it, you're going to go, what the hell is this? This is just disgusting. But you have to trust your nose. You have to get to the point where you trust your nose for that and don't listen to people. And that's why I love blind sniffing. I love those blind sniffing exercises because it takes all the bullshit away. It just blinds you and you just use your nose. And so if you haven't watched my blind sniffing episodes from the last, there's 2 live streams I put up from 2 days ago and yesterday that were amazing. Thanks to Armando for that, by the way. That was I really enjoyed that. That was a lot of fun. If you have experience with the dark side, which, sorry I broke your sample, Nissan, but I'm glad I at least got to do a video on it. Or if you just want to chime in to my ramble, let me know in the comments. Sorry for 2 Francesca Bianchi videos in one day. It wasn't meant to be this way, but again, circumstances, you know, circumstances took over, and I did want to put my thoughts out on there on the dark side. Is it a good fragrance? Yes, it is. Am I enjoying that mixture of her combination of that, you know, powdery, irisy, earthy, orris buttery, you know, somewhat green take on that honeyed, woody, incensey fragrance? Yes, I am. I'm liking it. Is it intimate and delicate like lace, like she says? Absolutely not. No, this is a synthetic bomb of a fragrance. It's big. It's there's nothing intimate or delicate about it to me, at least not what I smell. Do I enjoy it? Yes, absolutely. Would I buy it? No, absolutely not. But let me know what you think of the dark side. Francesca Bianchi as a whole. Again, apologies for doing 2 fragrance reviews on one house in a day. But if I didn't do it today, it wasn't going to happen. So, and sorry I broke your sample. Thank you again, Nissan, for sending it to me, though. At least I got to put it out there. Hopefully I want to do like a New Year's live stream. So maybe tomorrow, if you guys think that'll be fun, for New Year's Eve, I'll do maybe an hour or 2 live stream where we pick 1 fragrance from each house. If I got to keep only 1 fragrance from each house, and maybe we can do something like that and just, you know, have a ramble, have a end of 2022 ramble. So thanks for watching, everybody. Cheers, guys. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.